you very much. I am incredibly excited to be here. That was a filler slide that we can come back to if time permits. I never thought I would have a chance to be at favorite hometown cinema screening, The Martian, and getting to talk about it. So this is incredibly exciting for me. The title, The Laughter, Tears, and Joy of Designing a Bouncy Ball Meant to Crash Land on Mars for Science, kind of describes exactly what I'm going to talk a bit about. Who all has seen The Martian before? Fair bit, okay. So I'm going to wind up giving you some backstory that you can call it a prelude or prologue to The Martian. And I want to thank the folks at the Roxy, and I'm really excited that they got this grant, and I hope it's something that happens going on into the future, so yay Roxy. So little did I know that the highest achievement of my career would be essentially playing a role saving Matt Damon's life. So if you've seen the movie, I'm giving a little bit away, but this is Matt Damon, Mark Watney, the astronaut, reaching down. This is when the trailer for the movie was coming out, and he is touching some electronics on the Mars Pathfinder program, and I had the distinct honor in the early 90s of working at the Jet Propulsion Laboratory. I grew up right next door in La Cañada, next to Pasadena, and my team designed and built that white structure that has all sorts of weird shapes and angles to it that Matt Damon is touching. And so one of my very last, being in local politics, I've decided it's much healthier to get off of Facebook. So one of my very last Facebook posts was when the Martian, the movie came out, and I got so excited because in the trailer I saw Matt Damon reaching down, touching a thing that my team and I had built, and so I sent a message to my wife and was very excited about it. And one of the really cool things in the movie is how accurately they represented the Pathfinder program and the equipment. So this is the actual spacecraft and lander at JPL in Pasadena. So obviously the one we were looking at before was the Hollywood version that you can see. They did a really great job of replicating the real thing. So this is at the clean room in Pasadena as they were assembling it. And again, that white structure with the flag and JPL logo. We called it, really exciting name, the Insulated Structural Assembly. Engineers go around for exciting names. And basically the role of that thing was to keep a whole bunch of mission electronics inside at the right thermal conditions for the mission. And then obviously there's a lot of stuff hanging off of it, a camera, the high gain antenna which communicated with Earth, etc. And this is a really horrific slide. Fortunately, I'm not going to use it. I just really am putting it up there to contrast what we were dealing with back in 1995 and 1996 in terms of graphics. This is a description of when Pathfinder got to Mars, the really exciting thing that happened before it landed, which is the entry, descent, and then landing. So, yeah, I mean, stunning graphics, right? Fortunately, the missions that came after Pathfinder used the same method to get to Mars. And by that point, so I'm talking specifically about Spirit and Opportunity, they had much better graphics than we had when I was working. So this is going to go for about a minute and a half. But this is, you can think of this as Pathfinder because it's the same profile. Getting to Mars, going through the atmosphere, each shield is protecting the spacecraft. Parachute comes off, slows it down a fair bit. Each shield separates, goes away. So there's that unit that you saw in the picture before dropping away. Get ready for the funny part. This is the joy and laughter part. Right there. So the airbags are inflating, and so when I talk about a bouncy ball, so now the rockets are firing, so it's basically hovering, and boom, we drop onto the surface, and we act like a Super Bowl. Because clearly, this is totally the way you would want to get a mission to Mars. The emphasis on the sarcasm. So basically this goes on for 30 more seconds. And all the time, if you're an engineer who's designed something that's inside of this cocoon, you know, your heart is beating really quickly. Comes to rest, the airbags deflate, and then that, you know, sort of pyramid structure opens up. And the only thing that's really different from Pathfinder and the Spirit and Opportunity missions is that the rover is the whole sort of unit inside. And in Pathfinder, the rover was this little tiny unit sitting on one of the pedals, so to speak. But that gives you an idea for how we got the mission to Mars. So here is the little rover, it's about this big, sitting on one of the pedals. This is one of the first images that came back. And then when the rover drove off and looked back toward the spacecraft, you can kind of make out there the logo and the flag, and you can see the camera has extended up and is, you know, taking pictures. And this was, after the mission ended, known as the renamed Carl Sagan Memorial Station. So when I talked about the tiers, and really the main thing I want to get across is the opportunity and the learnings from failure. So it's not the greatest pictures. What you're looking at here are the giant upside down slingshot that was designed to test the airbag unit. And I can't overstate when, in the early 90s, when this mission was proposed and when I would go to dinner parties and describe what I was working on and that people's taxpayer dollars were going toward, and I'd say, yeah, we're going to shoot this thing to Mars. It's not even going to go into orbit. It's just going to go right to Mars. It's going to plummet through the atmosphere. It's going to deploy a parachute. It's going to fire some rockets. It's going to inflate these airbags, and then it's going to bounce around. People kind of went two ways. Some people were like, I can't believe my tax dollars are supporting something as insane as this. Or other people were like, that sounds amazing, you know, tell me more. And so the airbags, when they were designed, and the engineer built this big upside-down slingshot to simulate the landing. I don't have video of it, but the story I wanted to share was when they shot it down the first time, and when the engineer came back with videotape of how that test performed, he stuck it into a VCR player. The whole sort of project leads team was gathered together and we're watching on the VCR this thing, and it was just an absolutely catastrophic failure. This thing came down, you're seeing this sloped surface with representative Martian rocks that were put on it, so people use the Viking missions to say, okay, the landing site that we're going to have for Pathfinder, there's going to be this kind of rock profile, so we're going to build this inclined surface because our worst case landing situation was crosswind, so it's going to come down and it's going to hit it at an angle. And when he played that first test, the very first airbag that touched the very first rock, just everything blew up. You just saw dust fly everywhere, and one after another, all the airbags failed. Catastrophic failure. And I can remember we're all sitting around this room, and it's like, oh my goodness, that's bad. And I am not proud to admit that the first thought that went through my mind, and this is, I can't believe I say this on film, my first thought was, it's not my system's not going to be the reason that the whole thing fails, and, you know, it's going to be something else. Anyway, I mention it because this is the process of space exploration and, frankly, anything good and ambitious that we do in life. When we spent the next 2 hours in that meeting brainstorming how to change the airbags so that they might not fail catastrophically. And, you know, the mood in that room, it was such an important thing for a young engineer like myself to be a part of a group of people who were just handed this catastrophic failure situation, and to watch the mood and the spirit and the thoughtfulness in that room as we brainstormed, and I contributed hardly anything. I contributed nothing, to be clear, to the eventual solution. But I got to watch this group of people redesign on the fly the airbags. And frankly, they didn't make a ton of changes. They changed sort of the way the seams were. I think they added some layers of material. And what came out of that room then ultimately flew on the mission and worked. And there are several stories that I could share of similar sorts of experience. Our particular unit, that white structure, we found out midway through when we went to build the first sort of test unit that our whole plan for how we were going to construct it was fatally flawed. And we went to do it, and it didn't work. And we had to lock ourselves away basically in a room for 3 days and redesign how we were going to manufacture that whole system. But the team and the way that people embraced making mistakes, taking risks, embraced failure was, I think, one of the most powerful, if not the most powerful learning experience of my young career, and probably more broadly than just my career. So I'm guessing I might be running long. I will leave you with this quote: failures, from C.S. Lewis, failures, repeated failures, are finger posts on the road to achievement. One fails forward. I really like this. One fails forward toward success. And if you're wondering, like I was, what finger posts are, they're those signs, you know, that have then directions off to all kinds of different places. So that's what a finger post is. So one fails forward toward success. It was an honor to work on this. I got to work with people like Brian Muirhead and a number of other project managers who believed in taking risks and really embraced making mistakes and failure and learning from those opportunities and falling forward toward success. So thank you, and I hope you enjoyed the movie.
Thank you again. Let's hear it once more for Brian. That was really after the film as well. So if you want to stick around, you have any questions, like specific questions about what you see, sciencey in there, if that was real, if that was true, Brian, I'm sure will tell you exactly. But I have a question for you. How does your work at JPL, how does it affect your life today? I mean, you probably, at the very least, you probably get to say, like, well, that ain't rocket science, right? Because you're now going to go into it.
I try to avoid using that because everyone around me does use it. I think the way, two things immediately come to mind. You know, council and this community have engaged, and it's one of the things I love about Missoula, on some really, difficult challenges. And one of the first things that got me into being interested in city council was working on the city's energy conservation and climate action plan. And that's a thing that a lot of Missoulians value, us doing work around this, and often in an absence of leadership at the federal level. And so, but it's really hard, and it's really complex, and there's a leap of faith, and I love the expression leap of faith. And I think I learned from this mission and other missions to embrace that sort of opportunity of, you're not necessarily, if you're going to dream big, you're not going to know all of the steps to get from A to Z. And you don't need to know all those steps. There's that joke of A to B to C to D, and then a miracle happens here, and then you get the rest of the way. So it's influenced me that way, and then I think I can't not mention, I have as you read in the bio, we have a first grade daughter, and it really informs the way I talk to her about sort of dreaming big and taking risks and embracing failure.
Yeah. All right. Well, thank you. Thanks again for being here.
Yeah, thanks.
And again, Jennifer, I'm just going to turn it over to you and take it over.
Thank you all for coming, and thank the Roxy. This is great. I've been looking forward to this. I'm going to explain that title. That's what the talk is about. So if you don't know what terraforming the word is, it's probably something else. We'll talk about what that entails. I just threw in a slide another bit about my background, but I like to fly things ultimately. So if you look over towards the side here, that's a balloon, part of the research that we do through the university and through the Montana Space Grant Consortium is high altitude ballooning and looking at Earth's atmosphere. I like personally flying. A few of us do UAVs, commonly known as drones. And then I fly airplanes too. So, just like to spend my time flying. And before I launch into this, you can read this definition. Montana Space Grant is a NASA program that's in Montana, specifically for Montanans. And a lot of people don't know that we have NASA in Montana. And I've been fortunate enough to work for, I just call it Space Grant, so you don't have to say consortium anytime, for about 17 years now. And it's been a lot of fun. So moving on here to the movie, The Martian, is all about survival on a very hostile planet. And I started thinking, what if we could make it less hostile? That would make it a lot easier on Mark Watney, probably not as interesting in the film, but just what if? And the idea behind terraforming is, can we make something, a planet, more Earth-like? And I believe this says, it doesn't say it in here, but can we, in reality, is this something that's reasonable that we could actually do? And I'm coming to this talk from a perspective of, is this even possible? I'm not saying whether we should or shouldn't have another conversation, but this is really, can it even happen at all? And the term was first coined in 1942. It was a science fiction writer that came up with this term, which just wanted to keep that in mind, that this can ooze into science pretty quickly, even if you're just creatively coming up with stories. Okay, so, and if you want my opinion on whether we should occupy Mars or at some point, I'd be willing to share that one. But I'm getting excited, I got to take my shirt off. Okay, terraforming Mars, what do we need to do? Well, I'm going to start from the bottom and work my way up. We need to change the pressure. So this is Earth's pressure. And this is actually close to this is the Earth's average pressure. And Missoula usually has a value close to that. Mars has a pressure of 6 millibars. So what does that mean? That means right now, if you went to Mars and stepped on the planet, the pressure inside your body is so much higher than the pressure outside on Mars that your organs would rupture, you'd outgas, and you'd die. It's fairly painful, but it'd be quick. So the first thing we want to do, let's get that pressure up. And then the other thing that goes along actually with the pressure is we want to bring the temperature up. The average Earth's temperature is 58 degrees Fahrenheit, and Mars, minus 80. Pretty chilly. Even in terms of our winter, that's cold. And there's actually something you could do to improve Mars's atmosphere just for pressure and temperature. And one way to do this, Mars has CO2, so that's carbon dioxide on its surface in the form of ice. Sometimes it does have a small atmosphere, it has a little bit of CO2 in it, but generally most of it's in the form of ice. And Elon Musk came up with the idea that if we actually shot nuclear weapons at the polar ice caps, we would get a gas. And that gas, being CO2, would trap incoming radiation, so we would both increase the temperature and we'd actually increase the pressure because now we've taken this ice and made it a gas. Unfortunately, there's not enough CO2 on Mars to do that, so we actually have to bring in more CO2, about the equivalent of 1 million icebergs, 1 kilometer across on Mars, to have enough CO2 to do this. And there is CO2 in the universe, and we could go to other planets and mine it and bring it to Mars. It's an option. Another idea is to come up with some industry plants and actually put them on Mars and create a bunch of greenhouse gases. So again, we could throw out a lot of methane and CO2, and in turn what that does is increases the pressure because we get more gas in the atmosphere, and then we also increase the temperature because we trap incoming radiation. Okay, so we've got two things taken care of. Now you see the other issue here, in looking at the components of the atmosphere. Mars is filled with carbon dioxide, and we're going to make that worse, is the idea. And we have mostly nitrogen, and our other big component is oxygen. So we need those to breathe. And if we want to be on the surface and walk around without suits on, we need to increase the amount of nitrogen and oxygen. So we just need some photosynthesis. And another way to do that is we could, well, one, we could either go mine some nitrogen on some other planets, because we're already mining the CO2, we can grab some nitrogen as well. Or these industries that we put on the planet, they could become little artificial photosynthesis labs. And they could eventually, we'd have oxygen, because as we're warming the temperature on the surface, we also could then have some liquid water, which is really handy as well. So I think, hopefully, you're convinced that maybe this is possible so far, but we have one more problem, actually. And it is the magnetosphere. So Earth's magnetosphere is due to the dynamo inside the center of the Earth. So it creates electric currents, and that creates a magnetic field, and that shields us from lots of radiation. Mars's dynamo stopped a while ago, or really slowed down. So it turns out, MAVEN, which was, it's a satellite that's still orbiting Mars, and it was the U.S.'s most recent mission to Mars. Their number one mission for MAVEN was to figure out what happened to Mars's atmosphere. And it turns out they confirmed that the solar wind, once the dynamo stopped, the solar wind came in and just stripped off all of Mars's atmosphere. And that's why it's gone. So if let's just recap what we have so far. We could bombard the poles. We're going to get the CO2 released, we increase the pressure and temperature. Then we convert that CO2 into oxygen, we can breathe. And then we're going to have to keep doing this because we don't have a magneto. Maybe possible. Well, there's another idea. We could actually come up with an artificial magnetosphere. And in this picture, Mars is clear over there, and the sun is over here, and we stick a fake magnetosphere device right here. And what that does then is it shields Mars. And then Mars can have this whole process happen on its own. So what little atmosphere is there right now would stay, and actually the ice caps, the carbon dioxide ice on Mars does seasonally turn into gas. And so when that would happen, it would actually stay and not get stripped away. Both of these ideas merely take centuries. Just to let you know. Okay, what's needed? For any of that really to happen, this is all ideas, we need new technologies. And NASA has a plan, but I want to point out these new technologies aren't going to necessarily come from my generation. They're going to come from the next generation. And we need more scientists. That's my pitch. I'm speaking to the choir here because you all are here supporting science. So that's very much appreciated. And we need more women, we need more men, and we need more diversity in the fields to make a really strong team to put this together. So I think we can do it. And I don't know if I'll be alive when that happens, but so just to give you an idea what is being planned from NASA, there's the Earth Reliant missions, which we're currently doing, which is some of the science that's going on in the International Space Station. And an example of that is 3D printing different parts. So for example, if you're on a planet and you can't go to the hardware store, can you make the parts you need by 3D printing? Then in the 2020s, there's a plan to do, they're calling it the Proving Ground, and it's going back to the moon, but it's also having missions that are a couple days long, and you can't get quickly resupplied like you can at the International Space Station. So we're testing any of the new technology and new ideas get tested just outside the moon. And then eventually, 2030s, we would be Earth independent and send people to actually the Martian moons first, and then to the surface of Mars. So that's the plan. So everybody that's still in K through 12, we've got a plan for you. And this is the cool poster that that NASA put together for the journey to Mars. And I know that you're all excited to watch the movie, so I was just going to point out that once we figured out the terraforming and all this with Mars, there's still the issue of some weather forecasting. But again, we'll just deal with that another day. And I want to thank you for listening and being here and supporting the theater. And let's have fun with this movie.